Hey everybody, it's Risai here, and I want to welcome you guys to my new series where I review the Humble Monthly Bundle. So, this month's Humble Bundle is a bit of a mixed bag. I don't think there's any real big major must-have, so it's a little hard to recommend it. That being said, let's take a look at them. Let's see if you guys find anything that you guys didn't know that you wanted. Kinda like I did. So first up we have Tropico VI. Tropico VI is a rather in-depth city-building simulation game, much like SimCity. You play the role of a new dictator in control of a country in the archipelago. There's actually a lot going on with this game. The main point is to build up your wealth. You build buildings that produce things that give you money, and then you make trade routes to then go and make you more money. But wait, you also have to keep your population happy. There are 8 different resources that go to overall happiness, which you need to balance. On top of this, there are different political groups which you must keep under control as well, oftentimes at the expense of another faction. This is not my type of game. I have never really been into the building simulator genre, but from everything that I can see here, there is definitely a lot to unpack for those of you who are into this genre. Tropico VI, without the cosmetic DLC, is $4.99 on Steam, and it has dropped to as low as $24.99 on sale. Next up, we have Fae Tactics. This is an isometric turn-based strategy game, which bears a striking resemblance to Final Fantasy Tactics, even down to its name. In this game, you command— oh my god, is that a dog? Oh my god, is that a chubby bird? You command your troops. Let's get back to it though. The gameplay is relatively simple for the genre, but don't get me wrong, there is quite a bit more depth than what initially seems. For example, there are different passive skills and support skills, which makes something that seems very straightforward a little more interesting. Each of these units, friendly and foe alike, have elements which, like Pokemon, have their own specific resistances and weaknesses. Overall, I enjoyed my time with this game. You can tell there was a lot of effort put in. I was just a little underwhelmed with how easy it would probably be for those of us who have played a lot of this style of game. Fae Tactics can be found for $19.99 on Steam and has yet to go any lower. Third up, we have the Sunless Bundle, which include Sunless Skies and Sunless Seas. For the sake of brevity, I will be mostly discussing the newer of these two games, Sunless Skies, because they both share many similarities between mechanics and overall feel, they just have different settings. Sunless Skies is a roguelike in which you are the captain of a skytrain. Now this is a hard game to recommend, mostly due to its core gameplay loop. Now, while there is combat in these games, it's definitely not what it's geared towards. Instead, these games are more about the exploration of these procedurally generated worlds. Each run you do is its own contained story. In one of my runs, I tried to earn a quick buck by buying up a cheap resource so that I could then sell it at a different port for a huge profit. However, the journey there was a little longer than I had anticipated, and I had not quite stocked up on the necessary supplies to do this journey. At this point, I was in too deep. We had to find that location in order to sell this so that we could afford food. There we were, no food or water. Sometimes a captain has to make some tough decisions. In the end, my captain died alone on an empty ship. After this run, I immediately started up another one, using the information that I learned here to be a better captain in the future. This game is 100% not for everyone. I remember originally trying out Sunless Skies a couple years ago and not getting what the game was about. I put it down, I didn't play it, and upon revisiting this game series, it finally clicked. If this game at all sounds interesting to you, please try it out. Sunless Skies is $24.99 on Steam, Sunless Seas runs for $19.94, and the lowest sale price has been $9.99 and $4.75 respectively. Next up, we have Iron Danger. Iron Danger is a strategy game. It plays out in beats, and you choose what to do during each of those beats. Each ability that you use has a startup and a cooldown time that are counted in these beats. Seems simple enough. So let me tell you the main gimmick of this game. You control the flow of time. I know, unique concept, but actually very well done in this game. You reverse time and then you use the knowledge of what you had just seen to come up with a better strategy for the next move. You know, like not dying. This concept becomes even more interesting once you unlock your second character. Your warrior runs forward, knocking enemies down, killing them one by one, only to get stabbed in the back. You reverse time using this knowledge to find the one enemy and interrupt him with your other character, your mage. This then gives your warrior enough time to finish off the rest or turn around and start dealing with this threat in front of him. This was the game that surprised me the most out of all of the games in the bundle. I expected this to be rather generic, but there ended up being a lot of depth to this system. Iron Danger goes for $34.99, with the lowest it has gone to is $17.49. I really like this game. Next up, Autonots, Age of Enlightenment. Another game I actually didn't think that I would enjoy as much as I did. This is a crafting game, which normally I consider myself not to be that big of a fan of. So when the game asked me to gather a stick and stones to build my stone axe, I was prepared for a rather generic experience. Then the game asked me to build a robot. Then it told me to teach the robot what I wanted it to do. So by the end of it, I have this robot whose sole task in life is to make sure this 13 by 13 square grid will never have a fully grown tree in it. And that's how I started my new lumberyard. One of the neatest things about this game is how these robots are essentially coded by the player. It translates what it tells you to do to single lines of code, which you can then further modify. Each robot has 12 lines to work with, and I'm 100% sure that people that are much smarter than me can do some really cool stuff with this. I ended up losing track of time with this game, and in a lot of ways it reminded me of a good idle game. Autonots goes for $19.99, with $9.99 being the lowest it has gone. Next up, we have Shadows Awakening. So, confession time. I have never played a Diablo game. I don't really find them fun, they're not my type of game. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, here's what I consider to be a Diablo clone. Shadows Awakening feels kind of just generic. On top of that, it was also a bit on the easy side. As this is a first impression series, I didn't get too far into the game, and the combat might improve with some more depth over time, but I was just kind of bored with it. The story seems interesting enough. You're a demon who is summoned by a mysterious hooded figure. You choose what class you play of the 3 classes by possessing their dead body. And that's where the main gimmick really comes to differentiate itself between Diablo and this game. You can phase between the spirit world to fight with your demon, or to the physical world to fight with one of your unlocked heroes. One of the things that I quickly ended up figuring out is in the spirit world, you can't be targeted by the physical world, but you can still freeze them, which means you just use the freeze in the spirit world, swap back, and get free kills in the regular world. Like, I feel this game is perfectly serviceable. There wasn't anything particularly bad. It just did not entice me within the allotted time. There's definitely potential for the character swapping mechanic to be fun, but I'm not really the biggest fan of these type of games. On Steam, this game goes for $39.99, with the lowest it has gone for being $7.99. So up next, we have The Suicide of Rachel Foster. This is a walking simulator, and that alone should tell you if you're into this type of game. For those of you who are, the opening act for this game is actually really solid. You play as Natalie, who is visiting her family's hotels years after it went under due to a scandal her father was involved with. While assessing the damage to the hotel, she gets stuck in a blizzard and must relive her trauma, with the only outside contact being a FEMA agent that she can only interact with over the phone. Over the course of my short time with it, the atmosphere felt creepy. When I was playing it, it was 2 in the morning, so I had to stop and look up to see if I was going to be playing a horror game or not. I was assured that it wasn't, but I still kept expecting something to jump out at me. The best thing I can say about this game is that it really made me want to unravel the mystery that it dangled in front of me. And that's where my first impression ended. I want to make it abundantly clear that this game does in fact have content warnings. While I was looking up whether or not this game was a horror game, I couldn't help but notice that a lot of people have criticized this game for how it broaches these very serious subjects. With that out of the way, The Suicide of Rachel Foster sells for $17.19 and has been on sale for as low as $7.19. Next up, we have Fantasy Blacksmith. This game is awful, don't waste your time. Alright, fine. But I'm not being hyperbolic here. This game is a waste of time. The concept behind this game is that you're a blacksmith and you go through the process of actually physically making the sword to then sell for a profit to become the best blacksmith ever. The problem? This game is awful. Like, look at it. This is the single bit of gameplay I got from this entire experience, and look how bad it looks. During the time, I only made one sword. I tried to make more, but apparently you don't start off with any ore. How do you get more ore? You have to buy it and order it. Great, so you pay the money for the ore and then, wait, the game must have bugged because I didn't get any ore. Upon making that realization and wandering around an empty room for about 20 minutes, I put the game down. It was not worth it. And this game has the gall to charge $9.99 with as low as $4.99. It is not worth that amount. Next up, we have Goat of Duty. So this game just looks dumb. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. Like, the game isn't bad, it's just not good. It's definitely functional, it's definitely better than the other one game that I played this day. The third-person shooting just kind of feels serviceable. It never feels great, it never feels snappy, it's just there. None of the guns feel really weighty. They don't really have that oomph that you want. Another problem is that finding full lobbies is basically impossible. For the most part, it just feels like this game was trying to catch on to that Goat Simulator hype that died out so very long ago. But hey, I guess you can dress as Naruto. Is he dressed as Naruto? Goat Simulator cost $9.99 and at one time was given away for free. Side note, while editing this video, I must have listened to that bit of audio at least 10 times and I just now realized I said Goat Simulator instead of Goat of Duty. Next up, we have The Uncertain Last Quiet Day. This is a point-and-click adventure game that reminds me of a classic Telltale game. Are Telltale games classic yet? You know what, never mind. As with most adventure games, the player's enjoyments typically come down to the plot that's being presented. In this game, you play as a robot in a post-apocalyptic world in which humans have gone extinct due to countless wars. Or at least that's what they tell you in the first 15 minutes. You quickly find out that that was a big old lie and humans are still around. Turns out it's just a giant robot government conspiracy. And now you know too much. You know what happens to people who know too much? Well, it's a good thing that you're helped out by a group of rebel robots who are supposed to be helping out the humans that are still left. The rest of the game comes down to watching the plot unfold and listening to your character's inner monologue. As with most adventure games, gameplay comes down to finding items and solving simple puzzles here and there. Overall, I was engaged with it. I even found some of the dialogue to actually be funny.
For a long time, I tried to understand the purpose of this metal construction, but I failed to determine its practical use. Therefore, I conclude that this is an art object.
Don't judge me, please. But here's where we get to the major caveat with this game. You're only getting the first part in what is supposed to be an episodic 3-part series. The second part recently released 4 years after the first part has, with the third part still being in development. So while this was interesting, you're not getting a whole product out of this. With that being said, it's $14.99 on Steam, has been discounted as low as $149, and then it has also been given away free at one point. Next up is Basement. The game is ugly. The plot is dumb. It's purposefully edgy, but I kinda like this game, and I didn't think that I would. The game calls itself a strategy game, but I think of it more as an incremental game, with some extra thought put into it. The core gameplay loop is all around building your rooms to optimize your cash inflow and to accomplish level-specific goals. This part is fun, but I do have some complaints about it. In gameplay, you will be forced to restart a level. The game just throws problems at you so fast that you will not have the time to be able to react to them in-game. To top this off, the checkpoint system is not the best. For example, in one of the early levels, one of the goals is to switch bases, which I did as soon as I could. However, I expended all of my resources in order to do this. The game then immediately changed the goal to something I couldn't do in such a short time. Game over. So I reloaded my game and it took me right back to the beginning of that same goal. I thought maybe I had done something wrong, so I tried another way of doing this, and I just found out that it was mathematically impossible for me to accomplish this within the time. So I had to start all over again. This time, however, I knew exactly what was going to happen and I could plan around that, and I beat it in no time. That was just one of the early levels. I can only imagine what the later levels are like. This game ends up being hard to recommend. I do like the core gameplay, but it just has too many rough edges for me to be able to actually recommend it. And with that said, Basement goes for $19.99 on Steam with the lowest price, $9.99. And last up, we have Light Matter. This is a puzzle game where you move giant floodlights so you can avoid touching darkness. So let's start off with the elephant in the room. Yes, this game is heavily inspired by Portal. Outside of the puzzle game part, they're both set in a lab, they both have a disembodied voice that insults you as much as they can, and it even goes as far as to mention Aperture Science by name.
At Light Matter Technologies, we treat our inanimate objects with respect, not like those monsters at Aperture Science.
But let's get back to Light Matters. The game starts you off with manipulating the floodlights to make some simple paths to your objective. This eventually ramps up to multiple lights and moving pieces. Most of these puzzles were never too difficult and a little bit of thought went a long way. Towards the latter half though, there are definitely some puzzles that made me slow down and really think about the solution. Overall, this was actually a really good puzzle game. Light Matter is $19.99 with the lowest discounted price being $9.99. I will also mention that this game does have a 1-hour free trial version. Get as far as you can in the game, see if you like it. Alright, if you're looking to get this month's Humble Bundle, and you're only getting the 3-choice option, my personal recommendations are Iron Danger, Light Matter, and your choice of the Sunless Bundle or Tropico. Just too good of value. Now, if you have the premium subscription, you 100% avoid Fantasy Blacksmith. Everything else kind of comes up to taste. I would avoid Code of Duty as well, seeing as how it's probably going to be a dead game soon. But your last choice kind of comes up to personal taste. If I had to choose one that most people would dislike, probably going to be Basement. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, don't do either of them, they don't help. I mean, if you made it all the way out here, then maybe you could, that'd be nice. But, it's okay. I understand, I wouldn't sub to me either.